greatest challenges is to educate the private sector of what climate finance actually is and what the opportunities are. As a general rule, the private sector looks for opportunities to invest in areas where they can get an economic return, and what we need to do is to start creating those opportunities for the private sector. In the context of the South investments, then what that really requires is to have governments that generate policy environments that will actually encourage investment. Morocco, for example, has done a very good approach to renewable energy by implementing policies that encourage investment in renewable energies and attract international investors. The other key is, of course, governments playing a key role in bringing together foreign capital and domestic capital. In our experience, any successful project in the South requires a combination of international finance and South finance. So the South finance is more experienced in the local market. It understands the risks, it understands how to operate in that market, and it can work very well with international finance to deliver much better outcomes. But it's very, very important that the climate finance we have at a public level is made easily accessible to the private sector, and those funds can actually be deployed very quickly. I think that the potential is outlined in many of the INDCs that have been put forward in the Paris Agreement. So the INDCs represent the economic growth plan for many of these countries in Africa in order to rebuild their economies in a low carbon growth manner. So if we start with the INDCs, we then need to implement those INDCs and work out where the investment opportunities are. And I think in Africa, areas like energy and areas like agriculture are two key areas where we can invest very heavily to get very good outcomes to work towards the goal of the Paris Agreement. I think that making sure that the public finance is directed in a way that catalyses and supports the private finance is very important. But there is no doubt that many of the lessons learned in countries like Morocco and in countries like the US and Australia, where there are very significant investments and government policy to support renewable energy, those lessons and those mechanisms and those policy tools can be brought to Africa. And if we combine those policy tools along with existing guarantees like we have with MEGA and with other concessional finance, there is a very, very good opportunity to have a fantastic and very successful outcome all across Africa and across other developing countries. I think that, as in all over the world, there are some economies that are a better investment destination and have less risk, and other economies that are perhaps still very early stage, and private sector investors are more reluctant to go into those economies. So one of my thoughts is that what will happen is those countries in Africa, but also all over the world, in the developing world, that are the quickest to act on their INDCs and to work with getting policy in place will be the ones that will attract the finance fastest. Private sector capital tends to go into countries where the risk is lower, and then when it sees another country adopt a similar approach, it will then move to that country. So the lessons here are that de-risking economies to invest and then making sure that where there is a success, you replicate that in other countries will be key to making sure we unlock climate finance across Africa.